Hi guys, my name is Mayank and today we are going to discuss about Docker. Yesterday I talked about latest tools of DevOps. So one of them is Docker. So what is Docker is? Docker is a containerization tool. Now what containerization means is suppose you need a Python program to run on your system. That is suppose the name of Python program is app.py. But if you want to run this program in your machine, you have to install one OS, either it is Windows or any Linux system, either it is Ubuntu, Red Hat, or any kind of Linux platform. But the thing is, why you need to install the full OS if you need only one time run application like app.py? If you want to check only, then why you want to install the whole OS? Because it provides you that application that able to run this program. But in Docker, suppose you want to run a program that is app.py, you just have to download that image of 100 or 200 MB only. It will make a new OS or operating system for you, and you can run that code in that system or that Docker container. Now, what are the components that Docker have and how Docker works? See, there are major difference between virtualization and Docker. In virtualization, what you can do is, you suppose you have a Windows installed. In that we have a kernel, if you know about that, or you can take a base machine kernel. Then you have to install Windows system. Then you can install VMware software or VirtualBox software for the enabling to install multiple OS in your Windows system. But after installing VMware or VirtualBox, it will make another kernel for you in the VMware. Now, what is kernel? I told you in the first class of Linux that kernel is the mediator of everything. Like suppose I'm querying something from the terminal, like by date, suppose it will giving the output to me. So how it is giving? The mediator is kernel. Kernel, it will take the input to the CPU, then it will get to the output on the terminal. That's why, and like this, the first base machine kernel, then you have to install Windows. Then if you want to virtualization, then you install VMware. And after installing VMware, it will create his own kernel. Like suppose I have a virtual VMware workstation and I installed that. But now if I want to install any OS in that, by clicking on new virtual machine, it will make a new virtual machine but a new kernel also. That new kernel will take all the resources from that kernel only. What is the meaning of resources? Like CPU, how much CPU you want to give, 2 core, 4 core, like that. How much RAM you want to give to that PC, let's suppose 2, 3 or 4 GB of RAM. That you have to discuss it every time. Now, the thing is, this will take more resources. But now Docker architecture says, how can you install the Docker? Like you have a kernel of base machine, then you have Linux suppose, or Windows. You can take any both of them. Then you have to just install a Docker run or Docker software, you can say. Then you do not want anything. You can directly run your multiple OS in just 1 second. Talking about previous scenario, or you can say scenario in the past, that if you want to install one OS or two OS, it will take lots of time, like 30 minutes minimum, because you are installing boot up, make a boot, then you have to plug in, then we have to install. It will take 30 to 40 minutes to install one OS and to run your program. But now in Docker, it will take only 1 second to run your completely new OS. Either it is Linux, like HTTPD software, Nginx, CentOS, any kind of Python programming OS, like anything. This is the most important thing and the main difference between virtualization and Docker, that in virtualization it will make another kernel for yourself to make new OSs. But in Docker, it will not create any kernel. It will directly use this kernel only. It will directly connect it to this kernel. Whenever we create one only OS, it will take resources from directly this. Suppose you have now, this is the command to check the RAM. So how much MB of RAM I have? That is 4 GB completely. Not completely, you can say 3770 MB. But suppose if you make an OS from the Docker, you can say container, it will maximum take this amount of RAM by default. It will never ask you for anything. It will not consume much memory. If the load is increased, then only it will take that. I will tell you how to load increase and how this will work. But first of all, we have to get what are the Docker components we have. So what we have to do is, first we have to load Docker components. What we have in that is suppose Docker image. First of all, I will write now what is Docker image. Docker image is a platform, or you can say code of data that you can place somewhere in the as a bundle. You know, as a bundle like zip file, rar file, tar file, like that only. So Docker image is a bundle of any type of code that will create you one OS. Suppose you want to like run Nginx image, you want to run CentOS image, you can run directly by that image. That is called Docker image. Now, where we can find Docker image? Where we can find Docker image? So Docker image we can find on the repository. The repository of Docker is docker.io. In docker.io, you can find all the Docker images that they have. Now, the thing is, how can we download that image? How can we access that image? If we want to make an ID or we can directly download that. There are some questions about that. But before that, we have to learn about Docker image. So I told you there is a code and there is a bundle of that code that is called Docker image. If you want to run that image, you can directly just make a container by image. And where the Docker images can be stored, there is a repository of Docker that is docker.io. There are all the images of Docker are kept there. Now got it that? So the Docker repository is docker.io. The next thing is, what is Docker container, or you can say simply container only. So container is a runtime process that will do your work, whatever you want. Suppose you want to like run a code, or you want to ping something and you want to just type make a web browser. It will a runtime only, runtime container. Mean whenever your work done, it will delete yourself, and it will delete it. It will get IP also by default. Okay, so now we know about what is Docker image and what is Docker container. You can say simply container also, that is not a problem. But now the main thing is, how can you use that? How can you use Docker image? Before that, we have to learn a Docker networking, how it is work in Linux system or any kind of Windows, like Windows, Linux, any kind of, how it is work. Whenever you install the Docker software in your system, it will make a bridge of by the name of Docker 0 LAN card name. You can say this is the LAN card name. Like if you have Wi-Fi in your laptop, you have something like WLPS3 like name. So whenever you install the Docker software, you will get a LAN card name that is Docker. It will take care of everything in the Docker containers. Suppose you want to check the connectivity into the container, so you can not be able to connect without Docker 0. So that's why whenever you install the software, it will directly install in your system by the name of Docker 0. And it has some specific range, I think. So that is 172.17.0.0. This is the by default value of IP address that you will getting in the containers itself. So these are the basic components that you have to learn about Docker. So you know about Docker images, you know about what is Docker repository, that is docker.io, then the Docker container, and or you can say simply container. And what is container is, a runtime container that will do your work completely. After completion, it will delete itself. That's why it's a runtime only. What is Docker networking? Whenever you install a Docker software in your system, it will make a LAN card that is Docker 0 that is responsible for connection of containers between us. Okay, these are the main components that you have to learn about Docker. Now, the thing is, how can you install a Docker? Suppose you have Ubuntu or Red Hat. In both of them, there are different things that you have to perform to install the Docker. Suppose you have Ubuntu machine, so just you have to type apt-get install Docker, or you can install docker-ce in the Ubuntu. This is only for Ubuntu machine. I tell you, for Ubuntu installation process, you have to run the command apt-get install docker-ce and -y. This is your choice because it will ask yes or no. So if you want to directly yes, then -y is the tool to run that. Now the second installation process in the Red Hat one. So Red Hat installation process is really simple. I told you about yum, how to configure yum. So you just have to make the repository and directly run yum install and docker, or you can install docker star also and -y for your convenience to confirm that to install. Now, but before that, you have to make a repository that I told you in, or to configure yum for Docker installation. Now, how to configure yum? I told you, you can see the YouTube videos, previous YouTube videos to learn how to configure yum. But what is the what we have to configure there? You just have to change the base URL, or you can make a new file with the name of docker.repo in the location of etc/ this one. In this, we have a docker.repo. You have to make that. In that, the main thing that you have to learn is base URL. Now, what we have to learn, the base URL is, you can type mirror.centos.org, then CentOS 7 extras, then this one. This is the base URL for installing the Docker itself. And the last thing you know, that is GPG check. And in first line, you know about first line, that is like a square bracket, and suppose you can give the name. So this is the first line that you have to enter in this file. This is the second line that you have to cover, and this is the third line you have to do. So if I told you how to make that, so you can etc yum.repos.d docker.repo, and you can open that. You will have to get this one, not 1 2 3. Yes, just to have directly like this, square bracket docker base URL and then the gpg check 0. Now save that file. You just have to type now yum install docker. So yum install docker -y for yes. So it will take time to install in your system, approximately 5 to 7 minutes, depending on your internet connection. So now it's saying that Docker, this version is already installed in my system. So you can install by yourself by this command after configuring the yum. After installation, now what you have to do, I told you in the earlier classes of servers of Linux that whenever you install a package, there might be a service behind that. So we have to every time start that service if we want to use that. So we want to use Docker, so we have to start the service of that Docker. So systemctl is the command to start any kind of service. If you want to start, then you can type start. If you want to restart, you can type restart. If you want to check the status of that software, service, you can check systemctl status Docker. So if I see now, that is active and running. Okay. Now if I talk about Docker commands, There are multiple commands that there are, but we do not have to learn that Docker images like that. No, we have to learn the behind technology on Docker. So if I run a command to check all the Docker images, we have to run Docker images. It will tell you how many images you have in your system. So by default, you do not have to get any of the image. You will get 0 here. But in the earlier classes, I told you there are some prerequisite in my system. So that's why there are some images of Docker. Now that I also told you that in Docker images, download. Sorry, it will how many images of Docker we have. You can check by this command docker images. So if I run docker images, you can check how many images of Docker we have only. Now the thing is, how can we download that image? So if you want, because we have to download to run that, no? So that's why we are downloading that image, and it will download directly from the repository of Docker, that is docker.io. So this is the thing that you have to learn, that how can you download that image. You will get to know about the command that from that command we can download, but where it from download, that is repository of Docker, that is docker.io. Now by a command docker pull name of image, it will download directly. It will download image from the Docker hub. Okay, so we have to run a command, that is docker pull. Now how can we know the image name? That is the most important thing. That if I told you that HTTPD is the image name, how can you know about that? So we have another command, that is docker search. By docker search, you can find every image. Suppose you want to run a web server of Nginx, or suppose HTTPD. Suppose I want to run a Nginx software server, sorry, or you can take HTTPD also. That I told you in earlier classes how to configure that. So if you want to search that, so docker search HTTPD is the command to search. Now see, there are multiple images that you got, like docker.io/name/name. So see how we can read this. If you go upside, then you can see the index, or I have to configure that like this. So now index is docker.io. I told you the repository name. Name of the image is this one. What is the description of that? The Apache HTTP server project, like that. Now stars, it have 2972 stars, and this is the only official image you got. All are automated. You can see in the OK section and the official section, these all are the automated that are made by like us, like we are the users. We can made also. I told you, I tell you in next class how you can make the images and how can you list all the images here. I will tell you, no problem with that. So first we have to download this image now, because it's an official one. You can download any other image also, but today we are going to use official image. So I copied the name. Now what is the command to download? That is docker pull and the image name. So I know the image name, that is docker.io/httpd. So now it's pulling that image from the docker.io repository, trying to pull repository docker.io and httpd. So it will take time, because I think it's a 150 MB or 200 MB. So it will take time to download. No problem, we can wait for that and we can move further. So now you can see the images download, and the status you can see downloaded newer image for docker.io/httpd latest. I didn't hint there .latest, so it will directly take :latest. I will tell you how, but for that, now if you want to check that is completely download or not, you can run that command to check all the images of Docker that you have in your system. So you can say that is docker.io/httpd, tag is latest, image ID is this, and size of that is 166 MB. So this is the thing that you have to remember every time. That how can you download that? If you want to check history of mine, that is this one. I searched that httpd image, then I pulled that image of docker.io from the docker.io/httpd, then Docker images for checking that I got or not. So if you see in the first line, I got the image that I wanted. It will take some time to download. It will depend on only internet speed of yours. Now, I told you in 10 minutes before, after downloading image, we have to run a container. Now, the container can only run by an image. Not my point, that container can run only by an image, and you can create multiple containers from an image. This is the main thing that you have to remember. From the Docker image, that is, suppose you have one image that is httpd, and if you want to run the container, suppose the container name is container 1. By this image also you can make multiple containers. That is the thing that I have to convey, that you can multiple container, approximately 100, 200. There is no limit for that. You can make 100 of 1000 of container by an image. But why we are making the containers? That is the big point. We are making a container because we have to do some work there. Now suppose Docker images, we have the image. Now we have to run the container. So I told you, whenever we try to run a container, it will make a new OS. And I also told you about networking of Docker, that whenever you install a Docker software, you will get a Docker 0 interface name. And how can you check that? By IP space A command. This is the command that you have check your IP interface name, any kind of thing. So if you closely look at the 5th number, you can get to know that Docker 0 is there for networking of Docker containers. So this thing that you have to remember at all time, whenever you install in Ubuntu, either in Red Hat, you will get Docker 0 network, or you can say interface card. And the most important thing is this one, the IP address series. I told you about 172.17.0. And /16 means you can make 65,000 containers in one system only. You can configure it later by more containers, but till now you can make 65,535 containers. Okay, so now how can you make the container from an image? So now see, this is the main important thing that I'm running right now. It will make a completely new OS for you into 1 second only. Suppose you want to check my IP. So this is my IP address till now. But whenever I create a new Docker container, it have its own RAM, CPU, IP address, gateway, DNS, everything, host name, files, everything that is new, and that is newly created OS in 1 second only. So there is a command to make a container from an image, that is docker run -it. What that mean is, I tell you that docker run, it will run -it means interactive terminal. I want the bash shell, or you can say terminal, of that Docker container. Now if you want to give the name, you can specify --name. So I'm giving regex container or cont1. The name of the container that I'm giving right now, that is regex container 1. And if you do not specify that name, it will take any other name randomly. So till now we have to give the name randomly. So now whenever we -it, after -it, we have to give image name, that is docker.io/httpd. It will run that, but you have to get into the terminal. So what is the shell name is? Bash. The bash shell name of the Docker container. It will take into a new completely OS. It have its own IP, own CPU, RAM, resources, everything. Now we have to make a container that is in 1 second, that is docker run -it. Then we have to give the Docker container, image name, that is this one. Now the bash. Now see, whenever I press enter, it will take hardly 1-2 seconds to make a new completely OS. Or I enter, so you guys see now, that is I'm newly fresh OS. Either if you want to check the IP, there is a no command. We can install that in this machine. Okay, if you ls there, you can see there are different kind of files. This is a different thing. If you want to check uname, that is Linux by default, that is version of Linux, and uname -r, that is the kernel that is using from my system only. If I show you in the next another terminal, that is the same kernel that is using into the Docker container. So this is how you can make your container. Now what you can do in this, I told you about, like there is a process that you want to run in the container, that will run. After completing the process, it will exit directly. So if I want to run a web server, so where I have to go to put that image? There is no any kind of directory right now. So if I check the IP address, I cannot find a command. But from the outside, if you check, is there any container running or not? So if you want to check is there any container running or not, you can see by a command, that is docker ps. Now this is the command to check all the running containers. So now see, this is the container ID. This is the image that we use for the making a container. That is the command that we use and created about a minute ago. And port number is 80 open. And this is the name that I told you. It will take randomly any name. So the name is now Fervent Hodkin. I don't know how it takes, but this is the by default randomly name. Now, if you want to know more about a container, how can you know? So you can directly inspect that name to know more about a container. See, I got the IP address of the container, and if I want to curl it, curl means to check all the things. So it is connection refused. So I think we have to do some changes in the container, like I told you about this. That is this one. Now if I run that, okay, now you can see you have to run the command to start the process. Now how this command works, you know about the systemctl commands that I told you for start the service of any kind of thing. But in the Docker container, there is a no support for system D. So you have to start the service by this command. They can only for web server packages like HTTPD. If you have, then you have to run this command. So you can see could not reliably determine the server fully qualified domain name. Using this, you can see the message. So if I curl it, or if you don't know about curl is a command to check all the pages into the terminal directly. But if you want to see on the web browser that it's working, my web server is working or not, that you have to open the web browser and copy this IP to this http :/ and paste. So you can see it works. Now you can see the web server is running on your Docker container. And now I'm in the container itself. So if I exit from here, you can go out of that. Now, if you want to check whether the container is running or not, is not running. Why it's not running? Because container is only for runtime. I told you if our work is done, it will completely delete that container and work also. So this is how it works. But the next thing that you have to know about, there is nothing. But if you type hyphen a here, what is the meaning of hyphen a? Hyphen a means all. That is stop, exited, deleted, paused, unpaused, like that. So if you want to check all the containers that till now I created, that are these. These are the created containers and exited. So if I tell you today's container, that is this one. That is created 4 minutes ago, exited 46 seconds ago. Got that now? Now, this is the thing that you have to remember it every time, that how can you run a container. Now, the next thing, how can you give a name to the container? So I told you about Docker run -it, then the name of Docker image. But before that, we have to give the name. Suppose my name is Mayank, so I'm giving a Mayank httpd cont 1. Cont means container 1. So I'm giving the name this one, and the images that we are using is this one only. Now the command that we have to use is bash. Now if you try to see that its container is running or not, you can see by docker ps. So I told you about docker ps command, that is to check all the running containers. So this is the container id, this is the Docker image that we used, and this is the command that we used. Now the name is that I give, that is Mayank httpd cont 1, that is httpd container 1. But how can you see the content? httpd -d background. It will run that service into his background, and we have to run again the same page. You can see it works. So this is the thing that you have to remember it every time. This is the main thing that you have to remember. Now, if you check again, that is docker ps is running. But if I exit from here, it will delete that container completely. So if I again check that, you cannot see any container running. Got that idea now? But this is only exited. If I see here, this is only exited, not deleted, not completely deleted. So how can you delete a container? Suppose again I have to run a container, that is docker run -it, and suppose -f name Mayank second container, and the image we have to use is httpd, and then bash. But now we do not want to exit that, we just have to delete that container directly. So if I check is the container is running or not, so it's running now. But if I want to delete the container, then you have to use docker rm command and copy the name, otherwise container id. So we copy the name and paste it. So it will remove the Mayank2 container. But you cannot remove our running container. This container is running, you can see by docker ps. So you cannot remove a running container. Either you can use -f, that is forcefully to delete that, or you can stop that container first. But today we are only using -f for stop, start, pause, unpause. We can configure it tomorrow's class. So for today, what we have to use? Docker rm and -f, that is forcefully we have to delete that. So you can see that is Mayank2 cont is deleted now. You cannot see here, and from here you can see also that you are exited directly like this. Now if you try to check all, you can see there is no any container by my name, that is Mayank container 2, because I deleted that container. So that is the thing that you have to remember it every time. So this is the first class for you for the Docker. We'll make some short videos of Docker only, like 30 to 35 minutes, to understand better and to practice better also. So now I told you today, I told you today that is about Docker. What is Docker? Then after that I talked about Docker image. Now how can you download that image? How can you search that image? Docker search is the command to search all the images of Docker that you want. The next thing I told you how to install Docker in Ubuntu or Red Hat, and you can say and Red Hat. I told you about both of them. Then I told you about Docker network card. It will directly install in your system whenever you install the Docker software, that is by name of Docker 0, and the IP address it will start from this one, and /16 is the subnet mask. The next thing that I told you, the Docker image is kept on the Docker hub. Hub is also a repository. The name is same, Docker hub or Docker repository, that is docker.io. IO. Next thing that I told you, that is Docker pull to download an image, and the image name of image to download that image. Okay, this is the thing that I told you, pull image. Then I told you how to make a container. This is the overview I am giving of today's class only. So how to make a container, that is by Docker run -it. What the meaning of -it is? Interactive terminal. So if I write here, that is interactive terminal, and after that hyphen name, if you want to give the name, any name of the container only, then you have to specify the Docker image name. This is the method to make or run a container. And what is Docker container? It's a runtime process or OS that will do the work for you. Then I told you about exit. If exit that, the container will be exited. And if you want to delete that, so you can run Docker rm is to remove, rm is remove, and the container name. Then if the container is running, so you have to specify -s, that is forcefully. If I run history here, you can see this is the main history, this one and this one, and you have to make a repository also, this one. So thank you guys for today's session. We'll meet in the next one.